Moral exclusion occurs when individuals or groups are perceived as outside the boundary in which moral values, rules, and considerations of fairness apply. Those who are morally excluded are perceived as non-entities, expendable, or undeserving. Consequently, harming or exploiting them appears to be appropriate, acceptable, or just. This broad definition encompasses both severe and mild forms of moral exclusion, from genocide to discrimination. The correlation between a person's early child development and the way they are raised causes a child to externalize the good and the bad self or the good and the bad onto other people. The split people make when they associate their values as a dominant example leads to strong boundaries between the we and the they. Under these circumstances, it's easier for the we group to exclude the they group from their moral community and then perceive the they group as not entitled to the same moral and justice considerations to which the we group believe they are entitled to. Strong boundaries can drive nonviolent members of a society to dehumanize and kill victims under these conditions. Number 1, the emergence of difficult life conditions such as poor early child development. Number 2, an unstable political regime whose power is not being challenged. Number 3, social institutions that are authoritarian and open to violence. Number 4, claim for superiority, examples nationality, race, gender, culture, religion. Number 5, violence is culturally salient and sanctioned as a result of past wars, media attention, or availability to weapons. Number 6, there may be little sense of human relatedness or social bonding with the potential victims because little human contact with them. Number 7, hatred and violence are intensified if there is no active group of observers of the violence in or outside of the we group that strongly object to injustice and immorality. The main researcher that coined the concept was Susan Apatow in 1990. Susan received her PhD in social psychology from Columbia University in 1987. Apatow focuses on research on examples of moral exclusion that occur in adolescents' interpersonal conflicts with peers. Her research focuses on injustice and investigates the socio-political, psychological context in which the scope of justice, the extent of our justice concerns for others, widens or narrows. Other researchers that expanded the concept were Irvin Staub and Morton Dush. Morton Dush was one of the founding fathers of the field of conflict resolution. Moral exclusion was developed by Morton Dush with his paper called Theory of Cooperation and Competition in 1949. From there, other researchers such as Susan Apatow developed the moral exclusion theory.
Moral Exclusion and Injustice, an introduction by Susan Apatow, 1990. Empirical study used to approach the question of what is moral exclusion by 1. Believing that considerations of fairness apply to others, 2. Willingness to allocate a share of community resources to another, and 3. Willingness to make sacrifices to foster another's well-being. Symptoms of moral exclusion include exclusion of specific processes such as dehumanization, fear of contamination, perceiving contact as a threat to one's own well-being, reducing moral standards, victim blaming, etc. Ordinary processes such as groupthink, de-individuation, psychological distance, double standards, euphemisms, etc. Ordinary symptoms that occur in everyday life.
Outcomes of moral exclusion: those who are morally excluded are perceived as undeserving, expendable, and therefore eligible for harm. Although both of those inside and outside the moral community can experience wrongful harm, harm inflicted on insiders is more readily perceived as an injustice and activates guilt, remorse, outrage, demands for reparative response, self-blame, or contrition. When harm is inflicted on outsiders, it may not be perceived as a violation of their rights, and it can fail to engage bystanders' moral concern. Apatow, 1990.